Aye.
Good afternoon. How you guys doing today? What we have before you is the March financial reports that's included in your packet. I have a few things that I called out to highlight for you. So we are in the third month of the fiscal year. So we should be about 25% of the annual revenue and expenditures. So as you guys can recall, March of last year, we started to get impacted the pandemic in which the whole state closed down on March 20th. So year to date, we actually, compared to last year, we're about 9.3% higher, or about $767,000 compared to last year. So, like I said last month, the property tax distributions will not come until June. So General County, which makes up about 65% of the general fund budget, is tracking year-to-date favorably about 28.9%. So there's two revenues that are not highlighted in the packet, but I wanted to call them out, and that gives a good representation even of other industries that are catching up. So our video gaming last year tanked when everything was closed, and this year, just through April, we're already at 50% of our budget. So that budget was 135,000, so we're already at just about 66,500. So that's doing good. Another thing is our municipal aggregation just through March is already at about 63%, or $85,000. So they're small revenues, but they are doing really well. So, and if you look at, not looking at the departments, but looking at the subtotals, which is on the second page, everything that would normally be expected to have revenue in March is already at or above 25%, an exception to licenses and permits, which usually pick up closer to the summertime anyway. And for the general fund revenue or expenditures, we have decreased our expenditures from last year by about 7.6%, or 770,000. So with the board's movement last year to reduce expenditures and then to even keep everything at a same water level until the 2021, the gap has closed about $1.5 million compared to where we were in 2019. And that's even, so our delta March of 2020 was about a negative 1.8 million. And in 2019, it was about 2.2 million. So not taking into consideration all the outliers that might be for payroll or other expenses. In period 3 of 2021, we're only at negative 267,000. So you can see the board's action with the increased revenue in 2021. So far, we're doing pretty good. So those are a few things I want to highlight for general fund. For sales tax, I'm not going to go through the individual sales tax revenues, but again, we are seeing favorable movement from the Level the Playing Field Illinois Retail Act. So we will look forward to seeing that as it continues. Income tax year to date is also trending at 22.4% higher than 2020. I have a little explanation in the monthly financial report, but I want to call attention to something that I believe Scott has already touched on, so this might be a repeat of information, but in May of 2021, we received the PPRT was 161% higher than May of the previous year. So year to date, across all funds, we're already tracing about 114% of what we budgeted. Now, in normal economic downturn, we always will see a reduction in PPRT tax. So that's why we budgeted low. But this year, a couple of the reasons why the PPRT is higher. One is because in 2020, both the individual and the corporate annual taxes were extended, whereas in 2021, it was only the extension, you didn't have to file until May 17th of this year. but corporations still had to file. So in April, we had a lot of their corporate final tax returns for 2020. In addition, some of the industries, we all know that there's industries that did not do well in the pandemic, but there were industries that did favorably well. And those industries had revenues in 2020 that was far above even 2019. And so not only did we get their favorable 2020 income tax returns, they're also remitting 2021 quarterly payments higher. So that's another reason why PPRT is a lot higher. I have a little bit more of a technical breakdown in the monthly financial report, but to be able to explain it from a high level, that's the easiest way to say it. And then the only other thing that I want to draw your attention to for the fund balances, the change in the fund balances, is that IMRF was added this month, which is normal since it's heavily dependent on property taxes. I'm assuming FICA and a couple of the other funds, the special revenue funds, are highly dependent on property taxes, will probably be added to this list until June when that money comes in, and then they'll fall back off. Those were the points I had highlighted to bring to your attention. And for March, that was not directly into the packet. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from anyone? Yeah. The only other comment, Julie, I'd give also, the people that were due estimated payments that they had to pay, they still had to pay quarterly in April instead of waiting till June or July when they said they could. I guess it was May to May. So, but they had to pay it on time for those too. So, in addition to corporations.
Right. I can't 100% understand you with the math. Scott, do you concur with what you said?
Individuals that had to pay quarterly payments, estimated payments, they were still due on April 15th.
Yeah. So I can't really comment to the individual for quarterlies, but I know for corporations, they're, according to the sources that we have, we're consistent with the normal schedule.
Okay. Anyone else have questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Headington Oaks Financial. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet are the financials for Headington Oaks through March of 2021 and an update where we are in regards to the accounts receivable. We currently have just under $2.5 million of accounts in process that we're working on through the various different arms. We've made significant steps forward with RSM on the Medicare Bad Debt Project Phase 1. And thank you to Member Daly and her contact as we've been working through some Medicaid cases and their persistence working with HFS. Looks like we're going to get some recent large credits reversed in our favor. So we continue to work through as many accounts as we can, and I'll be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Paul, any comments or questions from anybody? Linda.
Paul, the hospice situation, is that because the hospitals that are doing hospice haven't been reimbursed by the state, so therefore they haven't paid us? Or is this a claim issue?
No, there is some of that. One of the large hospice companies we've got down in the state's attorney's office right now, which makes up a big portion of the balance. And then there are some that we've been contacting and working with as far as whether the state has paid them so that they can then pay us.
Okay, because we've gotten complaints in our office from other nursing home facilities about their hospice not being paid.
Yeah, we do have some of that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, the financial plan. Shauna.
right, we'll just do this. How's that? Good afternoon, everybody. The financial plan, I just have a couple real quick updates for you compared to last month. Quarter two, as Paul said, we're making quite a bit of progress with RSM, who's doing our Medicare evaluations. We have 2 different phases that we're working with them on. The first phase is now about 75% complete. They're just verifying some of the final numbers. So we are hopeful that at the committee meeting next month that we should be able to give you an update in terms of the dollar value that we will be seeking on that cost report. But I don't have a firm timeline for them, but sometime in the next month or so we should be able to give you a good update on that part of the project, and then move into phase 2. And then the second piece is that I know that we had goals established at the bottom of each of the quarters. As Paul said, we have been working diligently with Jenny and Dana and their team in the State's Attorney's Office to file some legal action in some of those cases where we believe that they just are withholding payment. And so the amount collected, that goal doesn't necessarily just represent cash. There's some different parallel paths that we're taking. So what we'd like to do is when we give you the quarter 1 and quarter 2 update, break that down even further to say, okay, our goal was 30%. We collected 20% in cash, and then the other 10% is tied up in court, or just break that down in a little more detail so it gives you a little more context. But I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
The other comment is we talked about in our meeting, the several of them the state's attorney has sent out, and they're in a mode where they have to respond, and I think they're like 60 days. They can go up to 60 days. So it's, it's the slowness of government that we have to go through and give everybody their rights to do things. So, I would like to move faster, but we just can't. So, okay, anyone else have any questions or comments? Thank you, Jenny, for working with and sending these out. Okay. Legislative update.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things for the committee today. First, on the federal level, just a quick high-level summary of the American Rescue Plan Act. Our final allocation number was $34,803,420 that will be delivered to us in 2 equal distributions or tranches. As you heard Julie say, the first tranche was received this month, specifically a week ago yesterday. So the first $17.4 million of that is already in our bank account. The second tranche will be available to us no sooner than 1 year from now. There's within the interim final guidance issued by the U.S. Treasury, there are 6 eligible uses of those dollars, and they're pretty tightly defined right now, but once you're within each one of those 6 buckets, there is latitude on how you actually spend those dollars. Those 6 categories are support for the public health response to the virus, 2, the replacement of public sector revenue losses, 3, water and sewer infrastructure, 4, addressing the negative economic impacts of the virus, 5, premium pay for essential workers, and 6, broadband infrastructure. At some point, Mr. Chairman, as you and I talked last week, we'll probably need to schedule a committee meeting to have a policy discussion on how those $34.8 million might be best spent. I said, as you heard, I just said interim final guidance from the U.S. Treasury. That's because we're in a 60-day comment window for the Treasury Department where they're soliciting feedback on these rules. And I would expect sometime this summer in July or August, once that comment window has been closed, that they would issue the final guidance and take the interim off it with any modifications that they might make based on the public comment that they've received. State-wise, we're getting close to the end of the session. Talking with our lobbyists last week, there was an anticipation that budget implementation bills would start to surface probably this week or early next week. Some of you, or maybe all of you, have received emails regarding the energy omnibus bill. We talked a little bit about that last month. Our position remains unchanged from what I said last month, and just to refresh everyone's memory, a component in the energy omnibus bill deals with local zoning authority for the siting of both wind farms and solar farms. Our current regulations are less restrictive than what is proposed in the legislation. So the state legislation would be more restrictive than what we currently require at the local level. My reading of, there are 3 bills that are out there. They're all essentially the same. 2 of them are identical because one's a House bill and one's a Senate bill. My reading of that legislation, and also talking with our legislative consultant and lobbyist, is that we continue to work at the negotiating table to get some modifications made, but the legislation does not take your local zoning authority away. Instead, it creates standards and regulations that you would have to live with, and many of those are more strict than what you have on your books today. We're also obviously tracking a number of other bills as they move through the General Assembly. But at this time, that is my full report as it relates to legislative. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Steve?
There was a public communication recently where Senator Kaler's office mentioned some funding at county level. Maybe you could articulate a little bit around that? Wasn't there a public thing where Senator Kaler's office talked about the state having some funding for the county, or is that for the city? Or am I just...
I'm glad to see Miss Allison as perplexed as I am.
Okay, we can talk more on it. I'll park that one for now.
Thank you.
I think they're still looking for the shoebox. Older people would understand that comment. Okay. Thank you. We have a resolution for the 2021 appropriation in Peoria City County Health Department budget to reflect the FEMA Public Assistance Funding joint with County Health Department Committee. Several of you were on that committee earlier, but could I have a motion, please? Ms. Blair, Ms. Allison Grove. Okay, discussion. Monica? Okay.
Monica, microphone, please.
Better? There you go. In your packet is a resolution for contractual services up to $500,000 through the Public Assistance Project, specifically for vaccinations. We did receive Illinois Department of Public Health funding for vaccination clinics. This has primarily gone to utilize for our staffing, our staff's overtime, transportation, as well as the operations at our kind of standalone site, which has been Headington Oaks. The funding we have here is to supplement our Headington Oaks site, which is our community strike team approach. We've used community partners, specifically Advanced Medical Transport, AMT, to assist with that, partly because of the way they're set up, having EMS services as well as RNs on staff to be able to do vaccinations for us throughout the community. So we've worked with FEMA and had numerous calls. So the next step is really the allocation to make sure that we are able to have those costs put forward and have that adjustment made. More than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Monica? What, easy crowd today. Okay.
I'm happy to, although it's maybe more of a legal opinion than anything.
Part of the application for this FEMA money was that we needed to have a contract in place with an EMT, is that service provider already established and in place, and the only company that's able to do that is AMT in this area, and Monica can speak to that, but we just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that the underlying contract that allows us then to apply for the FEMA money is with AMT. So, I don't know, Monica, is that sufficient explanation?
That is correct. Part of the vaccination clinics require that we had EMS on site, along with the fact that AMT also has a built-in RASP team, which has an RN capability to dispense vaccinations as well. So we were able to provide through a partnership. Our staff were usually on site as well with them. Our staff's time that was on site is actually billed towards our grant, but this is for the contractual services for AMT because, again, it's pretty much sole source. They're the only ones that had the ability to do that.
It's roughly 127,000, I believe. It came out of Rob's committee yesterday, because that's where IT reports to. And Chairman, as you said, it was a valid open purchase order. One of the team members accidentally hit the wrong button in the software and closed it out. And once that's done, it's gone forever. We needed to create a new purchase order, but the item that came out of Rob's committee yesterday is the spending authority attached to that purchase order.
Adjourn.